a very good evening to all of you. It is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I warmly welcome you to this conversation on the moment of lift beyond boundaries of change. So, when I think of a moment of lift, I think of that tipping point where perseverance, purpose, and innovation intersect, where personal transformation paves the way for collective uplift and creating long lasting impact. In my journey in wealth management and finance, I have seen that real growth rarely happens in isolation. It arises when leaders push boundaries, carry others along, and bridge gaps between commerce and compassion, between ambition and inclusion. Today, on this panel, we have these accomplished women leaders, each from a distinct domain, each breaking norms and creating impact in their fields, from healthcare, Anar, technology, from community development, Shafalika, and Kavita, to financial inclusion. Their journeys reflect stories of grit, resilience, and breaking boundaries. So, looking forward and warm welcome once again to all of you. So, I'll start with you, Kavita. So, Kavita, every entrepreneurial journey has a defining moment, a turning point. What was your personal defining moment, your moment of lift, the pivotal insight or the insightful experience or the realization that inspired you to co found Upstocks and also shape its mission in the Indian financial industry?
But first, I just want to say a huge thank you to Team Harun, Anis, and Tanzim. Thank you for organizing this event, a woman-centric event. It is such a pleasure to be here and listen to all the panels earlier as well. Look, every one of us is shaped by every experience that has come before today, right? So in that sense, I started my career with McKinsey and Company, which gave me an insight into scaling large businesses. Later on, I got an MBA in finance from the Wharton School and worked in private equity for about 7 years. So learned sort of the world of finance and the art of investing. But if I had to, roll back to that one moment of change, then it absolutely has to be me sort of taking you back to 20 years ago, by the way, to really tiny, I'm hard pressed to say village, more like a hamlet and a cluster of houses, and in the outskirts of Hyderabad. And this was a joint liability group microfinance set up. And I, coming from Bombay, was astounded to see that this was below poverty line. Women from rural India, you will be hard pressed to find a more destitute population. And yet, microfinance businesses, by giving out very small ticket loans, 3,000, 5,000 rupees, to these women, would then enable these women to invest in cows, goats, and buffaloes in their rural economy. And the beauty of cows, goats, and buffaloes is they multiply. Um, that's an ROI none of us in this room have ever seen, right? So in front of my eyes, I am witnessing the most destitute population in India, people and families that couldn't afford 2,000, 3,000 rupees, suddenly in the space of less than a year, not decades, not generations, in less than a year, they've gone to having 10,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees. And more profoundly for me, in front of my eyes, I witness change, real change in human lives. So the kids are wearing shoes for the first time. Someone's telling me, hey, guess what? My pregnant daughter is now eating 3 meals a day instead of 2. Or my kid is going to this neighboring village. And I'm like mind blown, saying, my God, right? First of all, the same skills that I was using to help large companies get larger or more profitable
Yes.
actually be used to fundamentally transform lives, and not just lives of handful of people, but lift communities, lift villages, lift entire regions, right? And so that was my first introduction to business and purpose, right? These two could coexist together, and that was eye-opening for me. And for me, the second takeaway was finance has this power to change lives. People talk about education as a means to change India and have long-term impact. but that gestation period will ignore an entire generation, right? But finance can do that in a shorter period of time. And so for me, from that day was born this mission, this passion saying, how can we fundamentally transform the lives of hundreds of millions of Indians using the power of finance? And sort of the underline is on fundamentally transform. We don't want to touch lives. We want to fundamentally transform the lives of at least 100, 200 million Indians using the power of finance. And that's the mission of Upstocks today.
Amazing. Thank you. So, Shafalika, you've led several impactful programs through BIFF, particularly focusing on women's empowerment and community development. Tell us about some of those key initiatives and what impact they've had.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to take you a little further back than where Kavita took us. So before they can invest is where I work. So essentially, the Bansidhara Neelapanda Foundation works in Odisha in 6 districts. And the way I'd like to put it is I'm in the business of enabling lives. So the outlook is inclusive growth. So I focus on women for all my initiatives. And what we have decided in the last 15 years is rather than, look at sporadic investments in one-time programs, we decided to make this a structured strategic investment in social impact, where we use 3 pillars to strengthen them. We heard earlier the importance of education, but the way I put it is we look at health, we look at knowledge, and then we look at livelihoods. We look at health because it is the foundation for well-being. If we don't have that foundation, we're not going to proceed. So, of course, we do it in the very basic ways. Take yourself back into this village that Kavita talked about, and we talk about intervening with them right at the stage when the infant is born, maternal and child health, adolescent health, the importance of nutrition, and improving anemia status. Then we talk about knowledge. Knowledge is both education and skills put together. Because if people don't have that, they don't have a voice. They don't have the tools to make decisions. So that is the second pillar. And the third pillar is livelihoods, which, as you said, is financial inclusion. If we don't put these 3 together, and if there's no financial inclusion, that is also a key segment in empowerment. So that is what we do. We work across 450 villages in Odisha. We bring these approaches with a holistic and a convergence approach. And in the last decade itself, we've impacted over 2.5 million lives.
That's amazing. That's tangible. Really, really. Great. So, Anar, I would come to you now. So, your designation, very, very special and unique. As a Chief Heart Officer, how does your background as a dentist shape the way you lead, and what initiatives have you found most helpful, impactful in fostering a people-first workplace?
Yeah, so, dentistry or doctors are community workers, right? So, first, you have to have empathy, compassion. It has to be ingrained. So, I have studied and worked in a government hospital in India. So, you can imagine. So, that is ingrained. That cannot be taken out of you. It cannot be separated from you, whether you go on to being a businesswoman. So after finishing dentistry, my husband had just started a new company, and he's like, instead of continuing dentistry, why don't you come and do MBA and you join me? So I was like, let's go for it. And then, we were 2 of us when we started, and now we have about 1,000 employees when
Wow.
we consider our manufacturing plant and all of that. And so, the culture that I wanted to carry forward, it was not possible when you go from 2 people to 20 to 200 to 700. You really have to have programs to pass on that culture that you want the organization to follow.
Sure.
So, we have we have a lot of initiatives, but two or three that I would like to talk about are, we have one initiative which is a buddy system.
Okay.
So when an employee joins us, we assign them a buddy. So that employee, the criteria for a buddy is that employee has been with us for about 1 year, and they will handhold the new employee for 30 days till the new employee is settled. So they basically help them settling in, and they'll talk about the culture of the organization. They'll, everything has to be aligned. And then we have another program, which is a Sparsh program, which is a 3-part program where we interact with a new employee on the 30th day of their enrollment, and then between 90 to 120 days, and then again at 180 days. It is again for a better, smooth functioning of, they have to basically get,
Aligned with
aligned
the
to the goals of the
organization goals.
organization.
Yeah.
They need to know who their team members are. They need to, so all those processes become easier. And then, we also have done a lot of women-centric programs where, on Women's Day, we did a health and nutrition program, or we did something where, how Kavita said, the magic of systemic investment plan, the magic of compounding interest.
Yes.
So even if you're making like 30,000 or 50,000 a month, how you should invest so that, just the magic of compounding interest.
We love talking about
Yeah,
that.
because just earning doesn't mean that you're financially independent. And in women, that's very important.
Absolutely.
They are earning, but they are not necessarily financially independent. So we do have a lot of such initiatives that we've taken.
That's really amazing. Yeah, I mean, we're very, very, very passionate about that. Yes, Kavita and I were talking about that. Yes, yes. All right. So, Kavita, as the platform continues to grow, Upstocks, how do you envision, the next phase now of the fintech innovation, shaping financial dreams, inclusion, transforming the way India invests? We've already come a long way, but what's the next phase?
Okay, well, I'm dinosaur enough that I've been watching this space for at least 2 decades. So, in 2005, I see 3 phases so far. Well, 2 I've seen, and I'm seeing the beginning of the 3rd. So in 2000, I want to say 5, when I was at McKinsey, India had 2% equity participation.
Yeah.
Circa 2015, I'm at Upstocks, and India has 2% equity participation. So that's at least 1 decade of stagnation in equity participation in India. And frankly, no surprise, because back then, opening a Demat account was extremely onerous. It was a 30-page document you had to sign at 45 places. Surely you would have missed a signature, it was going to get rejected, right?
Yeah, some of us could vouch for that. Yes.
And so it was necessarily a metro story. You needed to be physically next to a branch.
Yeah.
In 2016, Aadhaar became enabled, and suddenly you could electronically open a Demat account,
Yes.
which is spectacular. So I remember that in literally 15 days' time, we were the first to go live with saying, my God, paperless account opening. Before Aadhaar, we were opening about 500 accounts a month. Post Aadhaar, thanks to paperless account opening, mobile-based app, using other digital media, over the next 2 years, we ourselves reached about 1 million customers a month, right? And we witnessed firsthand, and we were shaping this growth story of access. So this was a decade of access between 2015 to 2025. Not just the number of Demat participants across the country has increased, but most excitingly for us, it's been a Bharat story now. So where predominantly it was a metro Demat story, 80-90% of Demat accounts are now routinely opened by tier 2, tier 3, and that's been exciting for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yet, as explosive as that decade of growth has been, we, 4x later, are still less than 10% equity participation in the country of our size, right? Which means a full 90% Indians are not holding an equity instrument, which means there are many people in this room who are parking their money in FDs. I hope you're well aware that post-tax, you are eroding wealth.
Thanks for that, Kavita.
And But jokes aside, for most of us, that's not going to make a material difference to our lives. But think of the tier 2, tier 3 Indian. Think of your maids, cooks, and drivers.
Yes.
Them, it is that difference
Yes.
between, is that kid going to go to a good school? Are they going to be in this cycle of loan for the rest of their lives?
Yes.
And so, we are very honored and very privileged as Upstocks to have had Mr. Ratan Tata as an investor.
Yes.
And this was a question he asked of us many years ago, saying, I am Mr. Tata. I am privileged to have the best investment advisors in the country advise me. But I don't need it as much as the mass average Indian. And who is going to advise them? Right? And from that day, our mission has been, how do we completely disrupt
Yes.
access to advice?
Yes.
The mass Indian, right? सबको पता है कि म्यूचुअल फंड सही है, कौन सा म्यूचुअल फंड सही है, किसी को नहीं पता है. And so that is the job that we're trying to do today. There is still a massive dearth of access to trusted advice. And even today, investment, wealth management remains the purview of the ultra rich. It doesn't need to be that way. Everybody with a surplus of 50 rupees, 500 rupees in their pocket deserves to have the right, trustworthy wealth advice. And that's the mission that we're on in this phase. And especially with the advent of AI, I don't see why the business models cannot be disrupted and why personalized advice cannot be delivered straight to our pockets.
Yeah.
So that's the phase that I'm most excited about.
Amazing. More parties.
Sorry, can
Shifalika.
I just say something? You've just inspired me that when we do digital literacy, we should add this as a component for the women.
Let's talk.
Absolutely.
We should. Wonderful. Great. So, Shifalika, since one of the topics of the panel discussion says boundaries of change. In your work career, what would boundaries of change mean to you?
So, boundaries of change to me is reimagining new possibilities, reimagining what is possible, like we just heard from you. It's about breaking those that invisible wall in the mindset. The subconscious narrative in our mind which says, let's approach this with some stereotypical bias, or who is the person who should lead, or can a woman create value? It's about breaking those mindsets. Social transformation is not a linear journey. And if we are going to be involved in bringing about that transformation, we have to approach this with patience and conviction. And if we are going to work at that, it means working on systemic change and believing that inclusion and equity are not just moral choices, but strategic ones. Right?
So true.
To me, I think ultimately leadership is about redefining the power as an ability to create an ecosystem, to create the opportunity for others not just to rise, but to thrive. Right?
Great.
As a catalyst of transformation, as a catalyst of empowerment, I think where we transform lives across segments without seed funding and yet give them wings to fly, that for me is change beyond boundaries.
That's amazing. Great. Anar, what have been, some of the challenges, the difficult moments that you have faced, where you have crossed boundaries? I'd like to know about that.
Okay, so I would like to answer that in a two-part,
Sure.
so if it's okay.
Absolutely.
So, personally, going from dentistry to a business professional had been a very big change, and I obviously spoke to many people there are a few people who have been, dentists or doctors and then gone on to, and, there was a very, very beautiful thing that they told me, that in our 5 years you have invested in dentistry, but, in a long span of your career, those 5 years will not seem that big, when you have a 40-year career. So they're like, just go for it, So that was a big change personally. And, professionally, we have encountered so many struggles. It's like a typical startup struggles where, see, nobody wants to firstly join your company because you don't have a brand, you don't have a name. Nobody with a good pedigree is going to want to join my organization. And even if they want to join, I'm not going to be able to afford them, right? So it's like, how do you thrive while not having any, financial, you have restraints, financial restraints, you have manpower constraints. So striving beyond that, we had to raise money even before we went for an IPO, because one single molecule to develop in the US will cost somewhere around 200,000, 300,000 to up to $1 million. So, you have to, so diluting that equity, and then of course going for our IPO was a struggle because the markets were very volatile. We went for an IPO in December of 2024. So markets were very volatile, and it was not industry focused. It was not for pharma industries. It was across all industries.
That's right.
Yeah, and so a lot of struggles. But I think continuing to my first question, our employee quota was full, subscribed some 100 times. So I think CHO does work. When you take care of your people, it does work. And so I think we strived despite all these struggles. But
That's truly leading with the heart. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Great. So just a wrap up question. So we stick to the time limit. What would be, and that's for all of you in whichever way you wish to answer. What would be your one mantra or a principle that you would like to advise to the next generation to inspire change or bring about their moment of lift?
I think, can I go?
Of course.
So I think as long as you have the correct intent and you work with integrity and discipline, you should just focus on what you want to do and you should go for it. I think universe just conspires to be there for you.
Actually, I'll add to that. I think the younger generation tends to overthink sometimes when it comes to making career choices. They should just act, not spend too much time working on it.
We have some young ones there. Yes. Yes.
I would say invest in yourself and invest in this country, because I feel like the smart young people of today should be solving India's toughest challenges and India's toughest problems. I would love to see a lot more of that. Certainly, please invest in yourself. Please upskill yourself.
Yeah.
But also remember that your career path is ultimately like a stock price chart. For various reasons, completely not in your control globally, etc., etc. The prices can go down, the prices can come down, but the fundamentals are solid. Focus on long-term value creation. That's what I'd say.
Amazing. Amazing. So, a big thank you to all of you for your candid stories and amazing insights. Would there be any questions, the audience? Sure. Okay.
Thank you, Jonas. So the question for you was, and I wanted to ask this when you answered one of the previous questions she asked. So you were taking up stock to make sure that it enables people, downstream tier 2, tier 3 cities to also invest, even if it's 50 rupees. They need to start creating wealth by investing in long-term, products like that you sell. And you said that technology is being used. Now, how do they understand language? Are they all English speaking, or are you doing it in different languages? How do they understand the value of a company or what they're investing in or what the mutual fund is that you're recommending? How do they get it? Is it language driven? Is it voice? Are you doing something about getting that message and the knowledge to them as well?
So certainly, like I said, the first segment of India that's been tapped so far is in the zip code of 8-10%. A lot of this is self-directed investing seekers, right? And they are typically educated, aware, English speaking, but a lot of content is available in Hindi and other regional languages, right? I think the next wave for me personally is the entire app should be vernacular, right? And that needs to happen, absolutely. So that is a step that we and perhaps the entire industry needs to move towards.